Hey guys, welcome back. It's Andrew here, and in this video I want to chat to you about how do you make a property pay for itself, and then as well make you a good return, even if you're even if you're brand new to property investing. You know, saying when people talk about when they get into buy-to-let and the agent says to them, or they say, yeah, but my tenant's going to pay for the bond, and my tenant's going to pay off the property. The slight issue with that is if you don't run your numbers correctly, yes, correct, the rent might cover your monthly bond, but does it cover all the other expenses like your rates and taxes? If you bought a sectional title, what about your levies and special levies? Now, what about general management fees? What about maintenance and voids? There's a whole bunch of other costs that we've got to think about. So when we talk about how does a property pay for itself, I want us to really break that down. And if you can, take some notes. So let me list some of the expenses I want you to be aware of. Of course, as you know, your bond. When you do get a bond, your building's insurance comes with it. Just remember, if you do go down the road of multi-let or student accommodation, you probably want to be fitting it out with contents, right? Could be fridges, stoves, ovens, whatever the case might be, and you will require, or you should get, contents insurance. Number two, of course, your rates and taxes, right? And yes, you may rebill if it is a buy-to-let, your sewage and some of the other expenses to the tenant, but write down municipality rates and taxes. Now, what about levies if applicable, right? If you have bought a sectional title, there could be levies that are applicable, and then other costs like general day-to-day maintenance. You know, don't think because you're buying a nice property that there'll be no maintenance over the next few years, as well as management fees, as well as your voids. Yes, there could be a great tenant in the property right now, but they may move out in a year and your property is empty for 1 or 2 months. Who's paying the rent at that time? These are all the costs that we do take into consideration. Now, this is all relevant when it comes back to my question at the beginning. How do you get a property to pay for itself? Number one, we're going to make sure that your annual rent is going to cover all the expenses. Your annual rent is taken into consideration the fact that you might have some voids. What if the geyser goes down or a burst or whatever the case might be? We have to factor those in, right? So step number one, before we even talk about a return, let's talk about paying for itself. So and here's a quick calculation that you can all do. It's called the gross yield. This is where you take your annual rent. So if your rent, for example, was 10,000 Rand a month, times about 12 on your calculator, right? That gives you 120,000 Rand, doesn't it? Divided by, just for argument's sake, say the purchase price was 1 million. Divided by 1 million, I times it by 100, and I get a percentage, don't I? And that percentage in this example is 12%. What does 12% mean, though? What it means is, generally speaking, from my own personal experience, is when the gross yield is below 18%, when it's below that 18 or below 15, that the chances are when I do run the cash flow, when I take that rent and I deduct all the expenses, that it's a negative cash flow. So I already know that the property is not paying for itself just based on that percentage that we've just worked out. But when I get to the 18, the 19, the 20%, before I run the actual cash flow, I've got a very good idea before I even run the calculation that now the property is going to pay for itself based on a 30-second calculation called the gross yield calculation. Now that, as a caveat, that's as it relates to residential property, right? And we're going to bond a property. So that quick calculation can tell me, is the property going to pay for itself? The next question is then the return on investment, ensuring that I'm making a good annual income, a good annual profit, and I'm looking at how much money am I putting into the property in terms of capital costs. Now, that's the whole other conversation when I get into the strategy, buying a property, renovating a property, renovating it, renting it, and then refinancing it to pull some cash back out. So guys, that's how you work out if a property is going to pay for itself, and that's how we start going down the road of what's my return on investment going to be. So make sure that you stay tuned to this channel. If you do like it, subscribe to it, because I will be sharing more about how to get to that return on investment. How do we get to 15% and above? How do we beat the bank's interest? Because of course you can in property. You've just got to buy right. Guys, stay tuned and see you soon.